ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
What? Did Claris just release a new feature without any fanfare that's like major and not tell anyone about it? Well, let's dive into it. This is Matt Petrowski for ISO FileMaker Magazine, and we're going to be taking a look at layout calculations. All right, thanks for joining me here on my desktop. We're going to dive right into the heart of this particular topic. That is a brand new feature that, in my opinion, is significant. I mean major. Now, I have the Claris website here loaded. I'm shooting this video on October 3rd, but I believe they released it almost a week earlier. I didn't even hear about it from Claris, and I knew that the feature was coming up from being a beta tester. This is amazingly cool stuff, and I'm going to show you why. We're going to go through the differences between the two platforms, but here you can see on Claris's website, I'm on October 3rd, and there I can't even find anything in here about layout calc. Look at that. My browser's finding nothing, and that's on the community website. Now, that I can't understand. I can understand on the Claris website it wouldn't be there, but if I go to the blog and I put in a search for layout calculations, again, nothing found. What's up? This is a very big feature, in my opinion, and very cool. Let's take a look at what it is. Hey there, this is Matt. Thanks for taking the time to watch my free videos on YouTube. This video has been sponsored by what we see on screen right here. Now, if you are looking for hosting, there's a ton of places that you can choose from, but I choose to go with fmcloud.fm, and I'll tell you why. They use the latest technology. Now, I haven't worked with other providers. They may be using the same technology, but I know the owner of fmcloud.fm, Fabrice Nordman. I trust him. I know he knows what he's talking about because his understanding of technology is absolutely solid. Now, these guys are using container-based technology. So every instance of your FileMaker server is completely isolated from another server. How does this benefit you? Well, because of that situation, they're able to provide all of the features, the full features of your FileMaker server. Now, if you go with some of the other providers, you may not have features that you would like to have, such as the ability to run your own plugins. And because each of these containers are isolated from each other, you really have a robust security setup. Now, if we take a look right here, just like any other provider, you can choose from all kinds of different places, anywhere across the globe that you might want to host your FileMaker database system so that your latency is low and all of your clients are connecting really close to your FileMaker server. So if you're looking to set up your own FileMaker server or maybe migrate from another provider, then take a look at the link that I have in the description or on the video or on screen right now at filemakermagazine.com/hosting, and we'll redirect you to fmcloud.fm, where you'll be able to take advantage of their great offers. All right, so let's dive into this feature. As you can see on screen, I have two different FileMaker files opened, and they are in different versions. Of course, this one is FileMaker 19, and then over here we have 20. Let's take a look at the About section so we can see what's going on. So as of the release of this video, it looks like they released, or this is just the date on when this particular version was released. It's 20.2 that you will need to have, and I'm working with 1.60 as a release. That is what has the layout calculations, which we're going to be going over. But before we do that, let's take a look at the default behavior of a text block and how it's been for a long time. So here in FileMaker 19, you have always been able to, and the tools, the way that they work is because this is blue, it is more or less locked into this particular mode of the selection mode. Now I can select on another tool, such as the text tool or the rectangle tool or the button tool, and it will stay in this tool until I release or stop using the tool, and you can see that it defaults back to the selection arrow. And it comes up with the HUD, that's what this is right here, and allows you to do whatever you want. Now, if you're making multiple of something, on any one of these tools, you can double click and you see that it goes blue, and I can make a button, and then I can make another button, and then I make another button. And unfortunately, in this case, the default button for this particular theme, having designed a theme, is a transparent button, but you can see based on my selection there, all three are there, and I can delete them. Now, the default behavior, when you simply start to type in FileMaker, is to just add text. What's interesting is you saw that that text was added down there at the bottom. Let's see if I can get this to start to add text somewhere else. I'm going to make a click right here. All I did is a single click right there where the arrow is, and I start to type. So there is an interesting thing about the text tool or any other tool that you need to know is that FileMaker will use your last click as the known location for where you're going to add something. So if I wanted to add something up here and I click and just start to type, you can see that the text goes right into that place. Now, this has nothing to do with the new layout calculation feature, but it's actually something very useful to know when you're developing in FileMaker. There's also another thing that's good to know. If you have any type of object, now in this case I've got just a regular rectangle. I'm going to make this rectangle a nice little red. I'll turn off my lines. And if you have anything selected in FileMaker, well, let's take a look at that. I want to make sure that you can see the bar and what happens here. If you have an object selected and you start to type text, then typically the boundaries of that object are what's going to be used for text. Now what happens is as you add more text, you can see that it is extending clearly beyond those boundaries. Also notice what just happened. When I finished the original text, the text box shrunk. It shrunk down, and if I was to resize this to this same object size, which in FileMaker a lot of the times, you can see right there what's happening, a lot of the times you really want to get things precise. This is annoying. This is terrible. I need this box, this text box, to be the same size as this particular object. Now, where does this impact you the most? It typically impacts you when you're going to have a lot of merge variables. I just brought up the merge variable dialog box. That was Command Option M. You can find it in the insert menu, I believe. But let's just put in this field, and then let's say I had a return, and then I wanted to put in another field, and I'm going to need a couple of these. I'm just going to throw a bunch of them on screen here. Now, here is the default problem that we have. In this case, all of my fields are fitting. I'm going to put one more just so that we can get it so that it doesn't fit. So it doesn't quite fit. It doesn't get exactly the bounds that I want. Now, there's two solutions to this. I could go to the size area, and I, of course, can use a reference object in my layout, which I'm going to do. I can see that this is a height of 91 right there and a width of 150. When I select this, I am 1 pixel over because the text won't accommodate it. Let's add a little bit more text and see what we're talking about in terms of what we're getting in terms of the new feature. Remember, I'm still in FileMaker 19 right now. So if I want this to be the same size as this box, I have some shortcut keys set up for myself. I can align objects and use a reference object in order to get my target object, which in this case is the text, to be the exact same dimensions. So if you're working in your UI and you use a reference object, all of these arrange and aligns allow you to use the reference object to get the object to be the same dimensions that you want. The problem is, as soon as you double click in here, that box extends. Did FileMaker solve that problem in 20.2? Not quite, but we did get a new feature, a new benefit that we're going to see. So you're still going to have to use your reference object or know that the height that you want or the height and width is what you need to set it to. You have to then go to your object, select it, and then paste your value in, hit tab or enter, or whatever forces the object back to the dimensions that you want. So where do layout calculations factor into this, and what type of change did they make? Well, let's hop over to FileMaker 20. And take a look. Here is the brand new thing without actually selecting anything. Now remember, you do have that single click. You can put a click, but under the insert menu, we now have this new feature, which I'll zoom in so that I'm not blocking it, layout calculation. You can see that it is Command-Shift-C. That might be the default. I assign my own shortcut keys using the operating system, but without actually selecting the text tool, which if you notice on the text tool, well, let's zoom in there, it's got the little arrow there. So if we click and hold that now, you have now merge field, which was an option that we had only in the menu before, but now layout calculation. So essentially, because they were adding the layout calculation, which is brand new, We also got the merge field, which was something that we could do through the menu. And that menu option, again, is just going to be in the insert. And we've had it before. We had merge variable right there. We had merge field, and we now have layout calculation. As I was saying, without anything selected, I can click and just do Command-Shift-C. And what it's going to bring up is a dialog box that allows me to specify a FileMaker calculation. Here is where you can obviously put anything, and I'm just going to concatenate these two, the most simple FileMaker function that you can get right there. Now what we see as a result, and let's go ahead and double check, make sure if I click here, bring up the calculation dialog box and do the same thing, see if it puts it there. We'll put the space on this one on the beginning. Hello world again. And there you go. You can see because I made that initial click in the top navigation as opposed to the body area, that is where the layout calculation put that text. But if you already have text, remember if I click and just simply start to type text, if you want to manually put in a function, you absolutely can, just like I could with a merge variable. If I knew the name of my variable, let's say it's a global, and I put that in, that will absolutely be merged in right there. So as I delete that, click, and then just simply start to type again. If I know that I want a FileMaker function, I can put in, and it is Option F on the Mac keyboard. And as long as you type in a valid calculation, this is valid, concatenated to cool, and put that. These are all valid. You don't have to go through that insert menu of the layout calculation. You can very much just type directly in a new layout calculation. Absolutely awesome. We'll go into browse mode, and you can see that everything on screen is being evaluated. Now, why am I so excited about this? This, in terms of the overall, I use the word weight, of your FileMaker solution, is much more optimized than the only other option that we had for displaying, well, not the only option, but what I would consider to be the only easy option, because there are anything that uses FileMaker's calculation dialog box is something that you can use to render. Let's take a web viewer, for example. If I put a web viewer here on screen, I have access to FileMaker's calculation dialog box right here. But it comes with a lot of cruft. I've got all these different options right here that I have to consider. The web viewer itself, as we'll see in terms of heaviness or weight, is very heavy. But what is heavier than that is the former thing that we were using prior to layout calculations, and that is a button bar. So this was the only way that you could get a calculated, not the only way again, was the primary way prior to layout calculations that you would be able to put anything calculated on screen. Now this comes with some consequences that maybe you do or don't know about it, but in terms of the behind the scenes things that FileMaker does. FileMaker from server, if the file is hosted on server or if it's web direct or whatever it is, everything that defines how this looks is using CSS in order to define on screen. The CSS of this object is heavier than this object right here. A straight up text box is very clean and very small. And I'm going to show you, if you hang into this video and you want to see, if you want to be an advanced FileMaker developer, I will absolutely show you how you can make that evaluation right here within FileMaker. So this was where we had our calculation dialog box, where we could type in, whatever is going to be displayed. In fact, one of the things that I do for, this is the primary way that I use display anything within a portal that has clickable rows. Rarely will I use the field or what have you. I will not use this. If it's something that I'm going to click, it's going to be a button. Now, the downside to button bars is this. When we go over to the settings for a button bar, when we look at the segment, a button itself doesn't always need an active and inactive state. Typically, you just need a default state, a hover state, and a press state, which is exactly what a button has. Unfortunately for us, because the button object is such a historical tool, we do not have the ability to put, there's no little pen icon, we cannot put calculated value within this. Although I haven't tried. Does this work? I haven't even tried this. I'm trying this right now on screen. If this worked, I would be thrilled to death because I haven't tried this. Actually using, because you can use merge variables on this, let's see if this works. This would be, oh my. Oh my. This right here. This is world changing right here. And I don't know if anybody has tried this, but obviously for the fact that this particular button bar has states that we don't actually want, the active versus inactive being the primary, in this particular case, using a layout calc on a button now essentially gives us exactly what we have right here, but we can just imagine that the pencil icon is right there. Now, that doesn't stop here. I've only shown you one layout calculation. Can you actually have consecutively two layout calculations? You can. You absolutely can. And the fact that I'm doing this on a button right here means that my button now just became the viable solution to what we have been doing with button bars. So moving forward with 20.2, there is no reason to use a button bar and have to deal with the multiple states when you can now use a regular button, and clearly we are getting our access to our calculation engine right here on a button and within this. So the last thing that remains in order to understand, because you know how crazy you're going to be able to go with your calculations, given that you can just put them on screen all over the place. Oh, which, by the way, you notice one of the things that I was mentioning earlier in the video was the fact that when you are resizing things, FileMaker will always resize down to the the maximum amount of text. So I'm going to add, more of my text right here. So what's nice is one of the changes that they made is the fact that when you resize, it just stays. So layout mode itself takes into account that if you resize this text, it will actually stay the size that you want, which is really good for working in layout mode. But the one downside is, regardless, if you want to edit this, when you double click the text itself, you will go in and it will resize the bounding box of that text object. You now have to go back to your old behavior. But let's try this. If we resize this object and we right click on this, one of the options we get, because FileMaker recognizes that a new layout calculation is integrated, is the ability to specify right here. Now, going into this dialog box, if I was using the dialog box itself to display or control nothing but the text, that means that this object will not be resized, which is really great. But in this case, you can see that the calculation itself is only showing the calculation code and is not showing, because it shouldn't, all of the rest of my literal text, which, out of curiosity, because I always like to see things, I wanted to see, would FileMaker respect its own locked mode? So if we go to the Arrange menu and we choose the Lock option, I'm wondering to myself, will FileMaker actually respect this lock? I double click and FileMaker does not respect its own lock on that field. In other words, the dimensions, if it's a text object, FileMaker will resize that object no matter what until they revise this, and unless they revise this, to show the full amount of text when in layout mode. But again, my argument would be, put all of your text in the calculation code itself. It's all just literal text. You have the advantage with the calculation engine in order to do everything that you would expect. And does it support formatting? Well, I need to actually take the lock off. Let's zoom out, take the lock off. We'll unlock that. Let's get rid of all of the extra text right there. And let's see, will this actually work when we go modify that calculation by right-clicking, choosing the calculation, and we'll just give this a little bit of text style right here. So we'll add some text style to this, and we'll see if we can get a bold out of this. My guess is you're going to get everything that you want. That's RGB, that's size, that's style, that's all the cool stuff that you would expect. And it all comes at a very low weight, meaning this does not increase to the cost of your FileMaker solution. What do I mean by cost? Well, when FileMaker server loads when the client loads a solution from server has to transfer all of the information about the layout and all the details, and the client then caches that information. It's probably using a checksum, a hash, something that says, has this layout changed between the time that it was updated where the actual file is on server and what the client has to show? If there's no change in the hash, then there's no reason it can use that same information in order to display the layout. So that comes in the form of how much did the button bar cost us in terms of weight versus this layout object. Now, there's always an easy way to find out what this is, what the weight of something is. Let me bring up the data viewer. There it is on screen. I have watch variable here. Let's clear out all of my stuff that I have from development. We'll go into this, and we have, just before I do this, actually, let's go to the layout. Let's select this object. Actually, let's get directly equivalent objects so that we can compare them. This is the wrap up. I've shown you, actually, I didn't show you the one thing you need to know. I mentioned that when we were looking at the button, which takes a layout calculation. Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. Can you have multiple? I already showed you that absolutely you can. So if we go in here and let's just actually make the most simple of functions, and let's put in another manual function right there. I mean, once you get used to that option F, I'm just going to be typing in my calculation code right into this text box. And we'll put another string right here. Oop, I need to close that out. Make sure it's a valid FileMaker calculation. So the way that this works, and we're going to take all of this right here and copy it, get on is that my button bar? That is my button bar. So we are going to put the exact same calculation code in here as well. In this particular case, I have this right here, and the closest thing would be in a concatenation right there. So in order to get those two things on screen, which should be directly equivalent, if we put them sort of next to each other, I get this is valid, another string, this is valid, another string. Well, I do have an extra character in there. Let's be precise. We are developers. Let's add in that extra space right there. Make sure that what we have is directly equivalent for a comparison standpoint. So I'm going to compare this object to this object in terms of its weight. This is what we want to know as advanced FileMaker developers. We want to know, what is the cost? What's being transferred over the wire? What are we paying in terms of a penalty of one thing over another? And why is this so cool? Why is Matt excited? Well, we can go to our data viewer, and we can put in a base elements BE clipboard. What is it? Clipboard. There's multiple functions. I have a tool that I created for myself, but I'm going to show you how to get the clipboard of an object. First, I need to copy the FileMaker object, which I'm going to do right now. I copied that to the clipboard, and I'll go over here. And what we're going to see is these little unique, funky codes. This very first code in terms of what base elements, which is a free plugin, by the way, is returning is the internal representation of a FileMaker layout object. So I need to actually get a value of the clipboard formats looking at the first value. In this particular case, why did it change? Because I copied that text. So this is the first value of the list of all of the different formats of the things that are on the file or on the operating system clipboard, just in case you wanted to know. So that means that I am going to pass into that the get text right there, and the format that it wants is the result of that. So if you want to know, this is the function right here that will actually get my, I believe, my XML. So if I go back now and copy the FileMaker object, and take a look, I can see this is the XML. This is the XML of the representation of this button bar. So we've got one final function that we're going to wrap around this, and that is simply the length function. So it's telling me 60, but remember, I just copied out of the data viewer the text I was working with. That's still not the object. So if I copy this object now, I don't want this segment selected. It is possible to select individual segments. So I'm clicking off of the object, then selecting the button bar as a whole, inclusive of all segments. I copy that, and let's see if we get a refresh. Okay, so my value, my return value, the length in terms of the number of bytes or the number of characters. It may not be bytes because it could be dependent on the language, whether you've got 1 byte, 2 byte language, etc. Anyway, it's 9135. Let's compare. Let's select this, copy, come over here. There is my difference right there. So I'm going to let you do the math in terms of a percentage of reduction. Anything that we're doing in development where we get a 10, 15, 20% savings, increase in speed, reduction in size, whatever it is, we are getting excited about that. So going from 9,135, I think that's what it was, characters to 6,759, you do the math, is a reduction that is worth noting. You multiply that times the number of times that you are using button bars on screen in order to display a calculated value, and that is why I am so excited about this particular feature. I hope in this video I have shown you pretty much everything that you know about this. Did I skip it again? I probably skipped it again. This is why you hang around to the very end of my videos. How do you edit these? Well, simply if you are in a second or a third or a fourth, I mean, for the most part, one calculation will typically get you the result that you want, but there may be times where you want to have multiple calculations in line within your text object. In order to do that, all you have to do is be selected within this context. So in between the double quotes, I believe you can be, I haven't tried it there. Let's see what it comes up with. This is valid. And then let's go right here and we'll right click right there. Another string. Okay, so it does work. You don't have to be literally in between the greater than, less than signs. For the most part, I just click right next to the F itself. But as it stands, you saw that I clicked right there in between the two preceding, which one is that? That's the less than signs. That works as well. So it should work here as well. I right click. It should be editing this second of the two functions. If I click anywhere here next to the F, here next to within the this, even here at the trailing end of the greater than signs, and as long as I'm within that context of that merge layout calc, that's when I'm going to be able to edit that particular function. And as we saw, one of the biggest benefits, you can do this on regular buttons now. So this is FileMaker's new layout calculations. Claris, why did you not promote the heck out of this? This is an incredibly cool feature, aside from the fact that when I size something, if I say I want it to be that small, that is exactly what I get. And for you, as always, I'd like to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.